Hello everyone, this is Either Predator here. I haven't posted it in a while, so I figured I'd post it on the YGO Scholars. So, I went to a tournament yesterday with Fat Man Fluffy Dex at Manticore Games, and I had a lot of fun despite how situational it was for my side deck. Now, this is Chaos Lightsworns. Whenever I was 15 years old, I loved Lightsworns to death. Like, I love synchro summoning, even though my first deck, whenever I started the game, was Ancient Gears, and Ancient Gears is my favorite archetype to play with. It's kind of like a Rada effect. How Rada likes trains, but his favorite summoning mechanic is synchros. So it kind of grew on me whenever I was playing the game and like time progresses. And I just started liking the synchro mechanic because of how easy for me it is to understand it. Without further ado, let's get into it. First off, we start off with 3 Lumina. Lumina is your main deck revival monster. What she does is that once per turn you're able to discard 1 card to target 1 Lightsworn monster in your graveyard to special summon it, and then during the end phase you have to send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. What Lightsworns are very best at is milling the deck. That's their whole strategy. With Lumina, not only do you get to revive a single Lightsworn, but you also get the added benefit of, say like you're playing a slower format and you're able to go to the end phase. You still have Lumina on the field. You send the top 3 cards. That right there is really good because that allows for graveyard setup. Nowadays, the game has gotten a lot faster, so her end phase effect isn't really that useful. But however, other cards in this deck actually make up for it. Next, the man himself, Raiden, Hand of the Lightsworn. People call him a very good playmaker. I don't think so personally, because he only sends the top 2 cards during either main phase, and his effect is also a hard once per turn, and he only gets the added benefit of gaining attack. I don't really think he's that good of a playmaker, but he's probably a good play extender. That's what I think. That, and I also use Lumina's effect to bring him back if I haven't used his effect yet. I mean, he's a really good level 4 tuner. He is easily retrievable. There are multiple ways of getting him back into the deck if you really want to recycle. He's a pretty good level 4. Now we go for the Beast Warriors. 2 Fellas and 2 Wolf. Wolf is very self-explanatory. He is a basic bitch. He's a basic extender. I love him. Fellas is also like Wolf, but has a little bit more restrictions. She can be special summoned by a card effect, but her own revival can only take an effect if she was sent to the graveyard by a monster effect. Wolf is very much better in this case, but whenever I always get the chance, I always want to get Fellas more than Wolf, because she's a tuner and I have more chances of sending Wolf to the graveyard than I do with Fellas, despite only running 2 of each. She also has a really good field clearing effect where, like, you can target, I believe it's 1 card. Oh no, you can tribute her to target 1 monster on the field, destroy it, then you can send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. That's instantaneous. You don't have to wait for the end phase for it to go off. Wolf doesn't have any milling effect, but his 2100 attack point, his 2100 attack points very much make up for it. All right, that's it for the Lightsworn bit. Let's go for the 2 ofs, which is Plague Spreader Zombie and Destiny Hero Malicious. Both are very self-explanatory. Both are extenders. The only difference is that Plague Spreader Zombie is a tuner that I can revive at any point. Malicious, I really do have to be careful with because whenever I was building this deck and I was playtesting it, oftentimes I like to mill even when I already have 1 copy of Malicious in my deck, and if I wasn't and anytime I wasn't paying attention, I always send another copy by accident. So yeah, you do have to really be careful, and honestly, you do kind of have to activate Malicious's effect right away whenever he's sent to the graveyard before ending up milling more. It's also a great deck thinning tool. Alright, you're not going to expect this. Here are the dangers. Danger Agapogo, Nessie, Mothman, Tsuchinoko, and Jackalope. All are very self-explanatory, helps thin out my deck as well as some added consistency. And some great levels we got here. We got 2 level 3s, 1 level 4, 1 level 7, and 1 level 8. The level 8, the Agapogo, I usually go into an Xyz summon with him, but occasionally I do run into situations where I can't use him as Xyz material, but I can definitely use any of them as link material. Absolutely. They help with the deck tremendously. Now we go for the little itty bitty Chaos Engine. Chaos Dragon Levianeer, Black Dragon Collapse Serpent, and White Dragon Wyver Burster. These three help tremendously when you're jam-packed with a bunch of lights and darks. Chaos Dragon Levianeer comes in clutch. Oftentimes I end up using his light effect more than his other effects because I really do want that revival to go into a more aggressive board. But sometimes I also run into a situation where I don't need the revival and I could just hand rip the opponent. Black Dragon Collapse Serpent and White Dragon Wyver Burster are really good extenders. All 3 of them very good in this deck. And last but not least, we got the extenders. Performage Trick Clown, Blackwing Zephyros the Elite, and Recover. Recover is like the best level 1 tuner that like any synchro deck could abuse right now. Well, it's a generic level 1 that any synchro deck can run if they can afford it. Blackwing Zephyros the Elite, pretty self-explanatory. Another extender, just return a card you control to the hand. It's any card, not just monsters. So if you say like you have a continuous spell on the field, you return that back to your hand to special summon him. The only thing that I don't like is that you take 400 damage from it, but that's fine. That's minuscule. Recover is a bit tricky. You do have to pay 2,000 life points. That's something you do have to look out for, is that whether or not Recover is actually useful in a situation where you need a level 1 tuner on the field. Performance Trick Clown, you take 1,000 damage, special summon him if he was sent to the graveyard by a card effect. He's a pretty good extender. Normally, I don't worry about like the amount of life points lost in any of these cases. Usually I benefit from these because it gives me the added benefit of more monsters on the field that I could use for link material or synchro material. All right, now we go on to the spells. We go for 3 Charge of the Light Brigades. Now, this, unlike Raiden, I consider this to be the best playmaker of all time, in my opinion, because not only do you get to send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard just to search a Lightsworn, you get the added benefit of graveyard setup. Think about it. There are essentially no downsides to Charge of the Light Brigade, no matter what. That's crazy, isn't it? Then we have the consistency booster, solar recharge. Say like you have like a dead hand that can't go online unless you have solar recharge and a Lightsworn in the hand. You can discard that Lightsworn that you don't really need at the moment to draw 2 cards and send the top 2. You get the added benefit of a sort of Pot of Greed effect with a discard cost. That's great. And you also get the added benefit of graveyard setup by sending the top 2 cards. I kind of wish you could just send the top 3 and still be able to draw the 2 cards. But I guess that will be a little bit too broken. So yeah, I think it's great where it's at. And we also have another consistency booster, which is Chaos Space. Chaos Space, very self-explanatory. In a Chaos deck like this, you do need to search out the monsters that you would want to have at all times. But let's say like, well, what about the monsters that you already banished and you can't retrieve them? Well, Chaos Space works for that. You can banish Chaos Space to target one of your light or dark monsters that cannot be normal summoned or set, place them at the bottom of the deck just to draw 1 card. Great consistency booster, great recycling. It's perfect. And now we have 3 copies of Blizzard. Blizzard is more for cards that are going to be problematic whenever you go up against them. This is more of a card that's supposed to go up against specifically Dark Ruler No More. This is a going first deck. You do want to have the biggest advantage possible, and you don't want to lose that advantage to 1 card. So why not use Blizzard? Blizzard is a quick play that can target any face-up spell on the field and then negate its effects and any copies of that card name for the rest of the turn. And then if it was sent to the graveyard, you get to add that card back to the hand, back to the opponent's hand. Now, unfortunately, it returns the card back to the hand instead of just keeping it in the graveyard. That's something I don't like, but what can a guy ask for? Then you got your one-ofs, your Monster Reborn, your World Legacy Succession, and your Pot of Avarice. These 2 very self-explanatory, as well as Pot of Avarice, great consistency booster, as well as recycling. World Legacy Succession is literally the same. Literally has the same reason as Monster Reborn. Just so you can get the added benefit of getting more monsters onto the field from the graveyard. Your graveyard, in this case, your graveyard is going to be your second hand. That's how combo decks works these days. Now we get to the extra deck. We're going to start off with the Link monsters. IP Masquerena. Everybody knows how IP Masquerena works. Your Crystron Halqifibrax. Crystron Halqifibrax helps with added consistency as well as board presence, and one trick I'll show later. Next we have Curious, the Lightsworn Dominion. Her effect is tremendous. I always want to go into her as soon as possible. Her effect is that if she's link summoned, you can send 1 card from the deck to the graveyard, and and the other effect triggers if a card was sent to the graveyard, was sent from the deck to the graveyard by a card effect. You can send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. That is absolutely perfect. The only restriction is that the only way that she can be link summoned is that if you use 3 monsters of the same attribute but different types. That's not hard for Lightsworns to pull off, especially since there are multiple Lightsworns with the same attribute, but all of them have very different types. Next, we go into Saryuja, consistency booster, as well as board presence. Then you have your Appaloosa for the negates. Then you have Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avramax for the OTK enabler. Alright, we're going to go into the Xyz monsters now, starting off with Minerva, the Exalted Lightsworn. I absolutely adore her. She is a great consistency booster, and the added benefit is that she can be summoned with any 2 level 4 monsters. That's insane. She is a great consistency booster for Lightsworns because you can detach a material to send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard, and if any of them were Lightsworn monsters, you get to draw 1 card for each Lightsworn monster. That's really great. Her second effect isn't really that impressive nowadays, since since you're not going to really keep her on the field long enough in this deck. But if you end up having her on the field as your end board, she has a really good field clearing effect. Just don't expect to rely on her all that often. Abyss Dweller, very self-explanatory, just going for the graveyard effects. This is more of a situational card. Most of the time you don't really need it, but whenever you're But whenever you're going to go up against a deck that heavily relies on the graveyard, this can really screw them over. And then we go for the rank 8, Hope Harbinger. I absolutely love this card. Anytime I want to make an end board, I always go for Hope Harbinger whenever I can. He's a great spell negator as well as a very big beat stick. Now, remember when I said something about Halqifibrax, and the reason why I have him is that I'll show you later? Well, here's the reason. Formula Synchron, the added benefit of drawing a card immediately upon the summon, and being able to go into a Synchro monster, XL Synchro, with this on the opponent's turn. For the level 7, F.A. Dawn Dragster, another spell one spell and trap negate once per turn. By reducing the level of F.A. Dawn Dragster by 2 once per turn during either player's turn. That's a really neat effect. And honestly, I still think that F.A. Dawn Dragster has more benefits than number 38 Hope Harbinger, but I always keep both. But I always end up keeping both because you never know when you're gonna run into a back row heavy deck and all that, or maybe, just maybe, you might end up going up against something like maybe you're going up against a deck that runs a bunch of literal hand traps, like Infinite Impermanence. You could use that, or maybe just great removal cards like Raigeki. You could use number 38 Hope Harbinger. The consistency booster known as Chaos Ruler. Chaos Ruler is a really good consistency booster as well as an extender because he can revive himself. You excavate the top 5 cards of your deck, add 1 light or dark monster among them, and then you send the rest to the graveyard. That's a really good consistency booster, and to revive him, you need to banish 1 light and 1 dark monster from your graveyard, except for himself, to special summon Chaos Ruler, but he's banished when he leaves the field. The thing, though, is that I always use him as either another synchro material, or I end up using him as Xyz material. We go for another level 8, Borreload Savage, pretty self-explanatory. He gains Boral counters, and even though his effect is a very hard once per turn, he is a great Omni Negate. Like, I'm not kidding. Next up, Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. I love Red Dragon Archfiends, and I love this card very much. Even though his effect is very limited because you have to end up negating a card that's already on the field, but that doesn't really matter. That doesn't really matter in the whole grand scheme of things whenever you're going for a board with 6 to probably 7 or 8 negates, if you're lucky enough. And then Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity, or the King of All Mouthfuls. I love this card to death. I always want to try and make a board to where I can get this monster on the opponent's turn, so that way I can completely shut him or her down, and then continue my plays next turn. And that's for the extra deck. Let's go for the side deck real quick. First off, I run 3 Dark Ruler No Mores, pretty self-explanatory. No monster effects can activate in response to the activation of Dark Ruler No More, and it negates all monster effects that your opponent controls. However, the downside is that your opponent does not take any damage for the rest of that turn, but that's fine if you're just looking to break a board, and then you can just OTK the next turn. 3 Artifact Lancias. This is more against dinosaurs than anything else. It prevents banishing for the entire turn. It's a literal hand trap. Well, not a literal hand trap, just a hand trap. I have a weird combination with this, but I have 2 Drolls and 1 Ash Blossom. I don't have 3 Drolls, although I would like it. I plan on getting a 3rd Droll sometime. I just don't. I'm on a tight budget right now. Droll is a good stop to a lot of decks, especially combo decks that love to search a lot. And Ash is like that one-time negate plus disruption for searches. Next, we have 3 Denko Sekkas. Sekka is really good for back row heavy decks, especially trap decks like Altergeist or Eldritch. She's really good all around. Now, what I don't like about her is that she can't be special summoned, but that's fine. In a deck like this, you don't tend to rely on the normal summon all that often. So you could swap this out for literally any monster in here and just prevent the opponent from using their back row. And finally, we have 3 Phantasmes. Now, the reason why I have this in the side deck rather than in the main deck is because oftentimes I'm going up against decks that tend to do all sorts of summons instead of just multiple link summons. Yes, I do get the added benefit of whenever the opponent link summons, I can special summon and then do the Phantasme bullshit. But it's like I said, oftentimes I go up against decks that do all sorts of things instead of just one thing, so that's why I have them in the side deck. And that is going to be it for Chaos Lightsworns. Now, the reason why I had a hard time was because at the time I did not have the correct side cards to go up against specific decks. I actually ran into quite a few issues with decks like, no, actually, there was this one player that I had no side card for, and that was Prank Kids. Now, well, Prank Kids with the Emancipator engine, and it actually worked really well. Like, even though I lost, I'm actually still surprised that Prank Kids with the Emancipator engine would actually be a very competent deck. But that's because I didn't really have the correct side cards for it, and it was also a pain in the ass for me to actually break their boards because of all of the negates, and at the time I didn't have Dark Ruler no more, so I couldn't exactly stop it. But now I'm more prepared than anything. This is a complete tournament legal deck that I plan to still use and hopefully win more matches. And I hope you guys enjoy the video. We'll talk to you again real soon. This is I the Predator, signing out.